Welcome, everybody, to the AG NextGen Leaders Podcast, where we encourage, equip, and empower you as a NextGen leader to effectively be a disciple of Jesus Christ who makes disciples of Jesus Christ. I'm Holly Davis, and I'll be your host. And with me today is Jay Mooney. Jay serves as our Chief Ministries and Resources Officer. Next to Jay, we've got Kelly Preston. Kelly serves as our National KidMin Director. And last is Josh Wellborn, who serves as the National Student Ministries Director. We are so thankful that you guys are here today, and we're here to discuss the Next Gen Leaders Conference happening next March 2024 in Orlando, Florida. So we are just super excited about what is going to be taking place at this conference, all the things that are going to be there. Jay, I want to start with you as we kind of give an overall vision of what this conference is, what it means. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, it's going to be really an incredible moment, Holly, because I think what's going to be able to take place is we're all going to be able to lean in together on what we share together.
Yeah.
And that is this purpose that Jesus assigned us to minister and pastor and lead next geners. Mm-hmm. And so in that process, what's really cool about this is that we've developed this theme about being all in.
Yep.
And it's really kind of twofold in its understanding. And the idea is this: Jesus gave us the commission that we're supposed to be on, and that is to make disciples who make disciples of every generation, not just for our own sake, but for their sake and those that follow us. And when we are sharing ministry, whether it's in KidMin or youth or young adult or whatever it might be, to be all in on that means we can be all in together.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. Kelly, what's your thought as you're getting ready for this conference? KidMin side, give us just a vision that you have on the KidMin side for this conference as we go into 2024.
Well, Holly, I'm excited to get together.
Yeah.
First of all, just the community. When the KidMin community comes together, there's a great energy. There's a great excitement. And then just to be completely honest, I'm super excited about one of our main speakers, Chad Gilligan.
Yes.
I got to spend some time with him at the Creative Conference.
Yep.
And I have to tell you, his heart as a former kids pastor is incredible. And I know he's going to speak into the lives of every KidMin leader there. I know he's going to encourage them, and for me, the biggest thing is inspiration.
Yeah.
We need to be inspired. We want to come and hear the voice of the Lord. We want to be involved in an incredible worship time together. But at the same time, most of us kids ministry leaders, we spend the majority of our time outside of the main auditorium.
Sure, that's
so
right.
To be in that environment with a world-class speaker speaking directly to things that matter to us from a person who cares about us, that's going to be a win for everyone who's
Kelly,
there.
that's so good because that's really part of the element of this whole conference that we get to encounter. It's leaders being inspired and being ministered to. Many times we as leaders, we're ministering to others.
Yeah.
Who's ministering to us? I love that.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah, well, again, everybody's looking for inspiration.
Sure.
We're all looking for it, and we all need it. Yeah. And when we come together, I remember the last Next Gen conference when Pastor Doug finished up, and we had those stacks and stacks of Popeye spinach.
Yes, he
and I
did.
still have mine.
That's it.
I still have mine, and I run into people who are like, remember? And to hear the superintendent speak directly to the leadership of Next Gen, it means something. It means something, and people left with the feeling like, wow, we matter. What we do matters, and we're seen not only in our congregation, but from the top down.
That's good. That's good. Josh, what about you? Just from a youth side, vision for the conference, where are you at with it?
Yeah, well, Holly, I was a youth pastor for a very long time, and just like Kelly, I love
time.
Emphasis on long.
I loved it. Love the local church, and just like Kelly, I love getting together with other leaders who do what I do. But when I think about coming as a local youth pastor to conferences like this, I think about coming with the staff team that I serve on. So when I think about maybe a lead pastor bringing his youth pastor, children's pastor, young adult pastor, and you'd say, well, that sounds like a large staff, or your volunteer who helps you with those things. I mean, it doesn't have to be full-time paid staff, but I know every lead pastor, and we're talking, I mean, these are our contemporaries. This is Gen X. There's still a few boomer pastors out there, but we've got Gen X now, millennial pastors. They're looking for ways to create a team dynamic that can minister to the whole family, to the entire next generation. You know, the next gen conversation doesn't have to be confusing. All it has to be is an inclusive strategy for doing exactly what you said, making disciples who make disciples, and continuing on that. So with our theme for the last couple of years being all in, I think about those associates coming, yes, to connect with other youth and children's workers, with other young adult workers who do what they do, absolutely. But man, if I'm a lead pastor, I'm looking at this as a catalyst to really solidify my team, because when we go back home, you're not going to be connecting every day with those buddies and with those friends that you made at the conference. However, man, Kelly and I worked together in Michigan. We had a great working relationship as a youth guy and a kids guy. I want that for every church in the Assemblies of God, to where youth, children's, young adult pastors, they're on the same team. They're enjoying fellowship together. And I'll tell you this, it's not easy. My motto since I was a youth pastor was better together. And the first thing you learn when you commit to that motto, better together is not easier together. So hopefully this conference serves as a catalyst for teams that want to be better together. And I would recommend they come as a team.
Josh,
go ahead.
I love that, Josh, because, you know, as you come back from a conference like that, I've been to many conferences over the years like you have that were kids ministry specific, and I love them.
They're great.
But when I came back, my youth pastor and my lead pastor, they had no idea what went on there. And I'm trying to tell them. And I remember once, you know, years ago, we even brought a video back to kind of talk about it. And if you're not there, it's not the same. And the opportunity for conversations to happen between the staff, and more than that, just to have an understanding of each other's role and where they are, I think is extremely valuable.
Oh, get all those racehorses going in the same direction. You've really got something.
Well, think about this. You know, it's been said that if you want to go fast, go by yourself. If you want to go far, go together. Well, there's an element of team speed that you can't gain by yourself, no matter how fast you are. And if your team is not there, you have to stop, slow down, do your best to try to recreate the spiritual moment from where you heard the Holy Spirit speak to you as a leader about direction for you and your church. Because I mean, look, as a lead pastor, if you're coming, you're the general. You're the general leading NextGen leaders. And so when you're leaning into that moment now, you and your team, your leadership have equipped together in the same spirit moment. And so there's a team speed element that is there that you can capture.
The speed of unity.
Yep, speed of unity. Here you go.
So, I mean, you guys really
That's Kelly's new book title, so nobody can steal that. It's all Kelly's.
I don't think that's a new book title. I think that's an old
Who is
book
that?
title.
Ketterling.
Oh, it's on my desk.
There you go.
As you can see, I haven't opened it yet, but I look forward to it.
Maybe you can read it on the plane to the NextGen conference.
So you guys really are touching on some really incredible just points, speaking not just to the kids pastor or leader, youth pastor or leader, but encouraging the lead pastor to be a part of this, right?
Yeah, because I mean, for me, that's part of the reason why we wanted to have John Lindell come. I mean, that's a NextGen church. It's always been a NextGen church, and they do intergenerational ministry literally in every week, whether it's weekend or midweek or whatever the event is. They just really do it well. And so we really experienced that kind of moment that can happen together.
And so Pastor John will be our main stage speaker on Monday night. He's going to open the conference, the service. We're expecting just an incredible move of God. Josh, you've told me a story before about walking into James River and seeing some of that intergenerational passion, you might want to say. Talk a little bit about that, just so that we can, get just the anticipation of what we're going to expect on that Monday night.
Well, in full context on why we would choose Pastor Lindell, you would think, well, he's at a large mega church. That's why. Well, that's not why. there's a lot of great megachurch pastors in the Assemblies of God that would do it, that are amazing communicators, and certainly Pastor Lindel's one of them. I went there as a college kid when it was under 500 people, and the first thing I saw walking into that lobby as a 19, 20-year-old were children's workers and youth workers holding, well, really it was just children's and nursery. They were holding signs, almost like a picket sign. And it had the different ages where kids went. It had the different. It said, can I help you? Yeah. Ages 3 to 5, ages 5, 6 to 9, et cetera. And when you hear Pastor Lindell today, because he's spoken on this topic many times in some of our networks, he'll say we've made changes of a church of thousands to facilitate our commitment to young families.
Wow.
And if for those who have attended there, you'll see, they changed. I remember when they changed the lighting. I remember when Pastor Lindell stopped wearing suits. I mean, going back.
Sure.
And this is all watching on the podcast and visiting when I would come to Springfield for different things. And I know lots of pastors do that. But that's why we went towards Pastor Lindell, is because he's demonstrated this since the 90s. And there is a pain point that leaders have to get past if they want to be committed to the next generation. Wow. Now, I'm not suggesting everybody, figure out what the new trendy thing is and go and change their stage or their sanctuary or their worship experience. However, you do need to be dialed into the unique needs and marketing opportunities for the next generation of people that are coming to your church. And I'm talking about from the top level. We do it instinctively, right? Because in children's ministry and youth ministry, we're looking at those. As a youth pastor, I'm looking at 4th and 5th and 6th graders, and I'm going, man, they're really, what are they into right now? Man, they're all watching Mr. Beast videos, right, on YouTube. Some don't even know what I'm talking about. But so how do I implement that into my youth service? Because that's the way their brains have been programmed to process information. Well, man, my preaching needs to reflect that if I'm gonna dial in and communicate a meaningful message. So I would encourage, and then I think lead pastors would benefit from that kind of trend spotting, not to be trendy, not to be so fluid that you lose your identity, but to be relevant in such a way that you can say to the next generation, follow me as I follow Christ, in a way that they can understand.
Yeah, that's good.
Absolutely. In fact, Josh, it's so modeling the importance of leading as a lead general, so to speak, as a lead pastor, because all of those age transitional moments, those age segmentation transitional moments, whether it's preschool to elementary, or whether it's elementary to middle, or middle to high school, or high school to college, or high school to young adult career world. You're, as a lead pastor, you're wanting to be able to create that environment where everyone feels like they belong in their church, not just they don't belong in their age segmentation, and that's what they're good at.
Yeah.
That's powerful. That's good. So take us back just a little bit, because the NextGen Leaders Conference was started in 2022. Take us back to that, where the idea to why this conference was important. Talk to us about that, where it started, how it started, why it started, and then, just kind of give us just an overview of what that looked like.
Yeah, I'm gonna divert this over to Josh, because I know that he and Mark Insminger were largely involved in getting there. So Josh, why don't you talk about that?
Yeah, well, Mark, you heard me say it about Kelly and I when Kelly and I were in Michigan together. That goes back to when I was a youth pastor, because when Kelly was there, I was the district student ministries director. Kelly was our top tier children's worker in the state, and we really wanted his leadership and his influence to help us steer children's ministries from the network office. And so when I came to the national office, that strategy just continued. When I was a youth pastor, man, I needed to be best friends with the children's pastor. You'd say, well, what does that mean? Well, that's just my way of saying we had to have each other's heart. So when I came here, I had to have Mark Ensminger's heart. He was the children's ministries director at the time. It helped that he and I had a friendship before. It helped that because as a network, I was the network children's director, for lack of a better term, in Michigan. So we already had a connection, and I was committed to making sure that we had each other's heart, because the guiding principles will determine the strategery, the strategy.
Sure. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And so this was a strategy that emerged from the guiding principle of what's your heart, what's my heart. So I was at the Kidmin conferences. Well, you were the youth director. What were you doing there? getting the heart of the children's ministries director.
Yeah.
Making sure that I understand what he's doing, making sure that we have the same heart, making sure that he and building a bridge to where he's willing to listen to my heart.
Yeah.
And so the more we talked, the more we realized this had to be something that was reflected from our, not just from the way we operate in the office, but how we do our events.
Yeah.
So then this conversation emerged. Pastor Rick DeBose, Jay, introduced this concept that of a next-gen strategy that was bigger than just youth and children's ministries. We had to get this to our church culture at large. Well, that doesn't come from the National Youth Director.
Sure.
As much as I want to think my influence goes to the nation, guess what? Guess who lead pastors are not listening to? They're not really listening to youth and children's directors. I'm saying that in a general sense, and I don't mean to imply that there's a rudeness to that. It's not.
Sure.
But they're looking to their leaders. So when our leaders said, hey, I want to put this on the heart of every lead pastor, on the heart of every superintendent in the Assemblies of God. This is the Assistant General Superintendent of the Assemblies of God,
right,
having a revelation from the Holy Spirit.
Yeah. Yes.
Mark and I looked at each other after that meeting and we said, it's time. It's time. Because we had talked about it for fun, but then we're going, oh, no, this is bigger than us. That was not just a fun conversation we had, because we had talked about it. And so again, the guiding principles dictate the strategy. And when we saw that there was a guiding principle for just an idea that the Holy Spirit had, that we thought was just candid conversation, you go, oh no, that was providential. That was something the Holy Spirit was birthing. So we go, oh, okay, it's time for the strategy to reflect what our leaders are saying and what now Kelly and I know in our heart to be true.
Yeah.
Kelly, speak to that a little bit.
Yeah.
You know, I was just sitting and listening, and I was there. I was there in the meeting when Rick DeBose challenged us all about how kids have historically been dropped. There's those transition places are where we lose kids. And I remember my heart was pounding, and the hair on my arms was standing up. There was no doubt that Pastor Rick had heard from the Lord on this. And, you know, again, Josh talks about Michigan. That's where we knew each other. We were serving in different roles, but I was in a church that NextGen, before the word was even something we talked about.
Sure.
NextGen was first and foremost in that church. And as he began to talk, I thought, wow, I have a vision for what he's talking about because I've lived it. I've lived it for 10 and a half years where the lead pastor, Josh, he drove this, that the youth and the kids and the college and career pastor, we were all on the same team. We were friends. We hung out together. You know, not every day, but we spent time. Right. He made sure
there was trust
that we knew each other. And I will never forget when we were interviewing. This is NextGen all the way. We were interviewing for a new youth pastor during my tenure, and the whole staff is involved in the parts of the interview process because we were NextGen.
Wow.
We were all together. But I remember our college and career pastor's wife. She said in the interview, she said, you know, we're each other's biggest cheerleader. And she was right. She was right. And so that's why I'm excited about this whole concept of NextGen. It's not just a word. It's not just something that we're reaching for. We know it can happen. But we have to do what we can do to bring each other together. I don't have the word I'm looking for, but we got to come together because we're so much more effective. I get to minister to kids. Let's say they're at church their whole entire life, right? I get to minister to them in kids ministry for about 6 years. And I know these kids and I love these kids. And then I've got to hand them over, so to speak. I'm handing them over to somebody that's leading youth. I need to know them. Yeah. They need to know me. They need to know that I'm there for them. You know, and I teasingly say I have a playbook. I have a playbook on parents. I have a playbook on students for 6 years of camps and retreats. And you know what? Let's bind together.
Did you steal that playbook from the Dallas Cowboys?
You don't want us to go there, Jay. You'll get me in trouble because you know how much I love the Dallas Cowboys. Or anybody who plays the Cowboys. But anyhow, that's a whole nother story. We want to bring this thing together because, Josh, I remember when you took the position in Michigan as district student director, you brought that slogan, Better Together, and it is absolute truth. It's absolute truth. We want to build block upon block when we're building disciples.
Hey, I want to lean into that for a second, too, because, you know, Lee Rogers wrote this book that is going to be coming out here this next year, and to leaders, and it's going to be a great book. If you're a NextGen leader, you really want to get a hold of this resource. I read through this, and it's amazing. One of the things he was bringing out kind of in his early part of some of his reflection was that, and you know, we're going to be celebrating as an Assemblies of God fellowship in the United States. We're going to be celebrating 100 years of leaning in on NextGen ministry in 2025.
Yes.
And in fact, we'll lean into that a little bit at the conference.
That's
but nevertheless, think about it. 52% of the Assemblies of God adherents are 35 or under. You get that by leaning into it for 100 years. Right. And that's what's so cool about that. And there's some of you are thinking even right now, you're thinking, well, we don't look at 35-year-olds as NextGen in our church, but there are churches and I'm speaking to some of you right now, you actually do see NextGen ministry all the way up into the 30s. And so that 20-something segment right there is just as important as everything else.
Sure. So let's talk now, because we've added, 2022, we had youth, and we're speaking more on the breakout sessions, youth breakout sessions, kid men breakout sessions, but we've added this year a young adult track per se, and we're really emphasizing the young adult leader to be a part of this conference. Jay, why was that so important? Josh, both of you just kind of talk about that.
Yeah. You know, young adult ministry has never been more critical for our fellowship than it is right now. We are committed to leaning into valuing and empowering young adult ministry, and to do that in such a way that completes what we're talking about and complements what we're talking about. Josh?
I'll jump in there, Jay, because you just said something that if someone's a passive listener, they might be like, well, that's just how communicators talk. This is how preachers talk. You said young adult ministry is never more important than it is right now. And I just want to highlight that for just a moment and give the listener a chance to think about that one for just a second. And because they should push back on that. And here's what they should discover when they push back on it. So Gen Z, current crop of Gen Z. We've got a couple of Gen Z young people that work in the National Youth Department, and they joke about some of my stories. It's like, well, Josh, that was before I was born, So that's the age gap we're talking about, right? Yeah. So to put it in context, Gen Z, most sociologists would agree, born between 1997, 2012, 2013. Now, I've got a 12-year-old who was born in 2011. That means that most sociologists would say that she's Gen Alpha. So I would say right now, your 7th, 8th grader, all the way through the kid who was born in 1997, the young person who's working their first job out of college is Gen Z. And here's a tidbit. This should rattle every lead pastor in the Assemblies of God. Gen Z is the largest generation currently alive here on earth. They're bigger than the boomers, bigger than Gen X. That's not a surprise. They're bigger than the millennials. There's more of them. So you say, well, what does that mean? There is a cultural shift coming that the church really needs to get ahead of, because all of marketing, it's going to be in the next 10 years, it's going to be targeted at Gen Z. Yeah. Everything that you buy, sell, entertainment, it's going to be targeted at Gen Z. Automobile production, going to be targeted at Gen Z. The products that you have access to at Walmart, going to be targeted at Gen Z. And eventually the music you hear in the grocery store, targeted at Gen Z. So again, lead pastors, think about how you're discipling your young adults. And I know it's hard because they don't, and I'll just say it, it's a bit of an elephant in the room, and I know I'm not trying to be ugly or mean. I know they don't pay for their seats, but from an economic perspective, in the next 10 years, they will be paying for their seats. But if you're not taking care of their spiritual needs, they will be paying for those seats at the club, at the bar, at whatever the how to meet singles on whatever app is popular. That's where they will be in 10 years. And they won't be in our churches if we do not offer substantive community in the form of disciples who make disciples, not just in a segmented ministry of our church, but in the community as a whole. Anyway, that's my thoughts on young adults.
Josh, that really leans into a key point. And Kelly, you actually alluded to this earlier in the conversation. And we have to, as pastors who've been given specific assignments, we must pastor those that we're shepherding beyond our influence. And And the idea of being able to pastor as a whole church, a generation that's growing up and knowing that they're making these key shifts. Young adult is uniquely different in the growing up world for all of us, because what happens is we all share this one commonality, the education system. And we get into this education system in our culture, in our Western world, and you go through, preschool and elementary and middle and high school. But once you hit graduation from high school, ministry for young adult ministry changes significantly, because the one thing that we have in common, we don't all have in common anymore.
Sure.
And that is that everybody's going to school.
Yeah.
Right.
And so it changes. It becomes this large gathering of affinity groups. And while in our locales, especially in a rural setting, that can be a little different in the sense that you don't have multiple affinity groups sometimes of large groupings, but there is a uniqueness to it. And we must do better in our fellowship for the sake of everything that you just talked about, Josh.
Yeah. Well, and a fun statistic to just kick around in your head for a second is that only 44% of Americans go to college.
Yeah.
So oftentimes we think, well, we need to have a college ministry. And hey, that's great. You should have a college ministry. And man, we should get behind ministries like Chi Alpha to reach the lost on our campuses and make sure that there's a discipleship avenue that comes to them when they're not willing to come to church, right? I think that's super important. But again, if only 44% of Americans, now that statistic, only 44% go to college. That doesn't even account for the numbers that do not complete a 4-year degree. So most of our culture is still a culture that does not hold a college degree. Now, and that's okay. So what are we doing to build community for the young professionals who are trying to find their vocation in the absence of college? Sure. So just to underscore what you just said about basically high school graduation becomes the great disbursement avenue of avenues of life.
And as a kidmin leader or a youth leader, you and I are responsible for that in our churches. Mm-hmm. We're responsible for those kids. We want to see them grow up and to be everything that God's called them to be, and we can do that intentionally in our responsible ministries and see that moment come.
And isn't that the best reward for kids and children's ministry when you see them serving the Lord as adults?
Yeah.
I mean, my goodness. Just this morning, Jennifer was watching a Zoom of one of our former students who's going through an adoption process. She invited all of her friends and relatives to be on Zoom while she went into that court hearing where she got to say, where the judge says, you are now a family. And so talk about rewarding. That's what we want, is to see them serving the Lord as adults.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, just hearing the passion for young adult ministry really is why we said, hey, at the NextGen Leaders Conference, we want to make sure that we're including the young adult leaders and saying, you are a part of this next gen.
That's right.
We are all in, not just for kids, not just for youth, but the young adult leaders. We are all in, right?
Amen.
Well, Holly, it's a big part of the handoff.
Yeah.
I mean, it's already been
100%.
stated. There is a mass exodus when you leave the comfort and the community of kids ministry and go to youth ministry. There's still that community.
Yes.
And there's still that comfort of people that you know, but has been said already so well. When you launch out from school and you're done with school, that community can be gone.
Yeah.
And you're looking for it somewhere. And as you mentioned, Gen Z, they want experience. That's what they want. Yeah. They want experience more than products and resources. They want experience. And we need to make sure that our next step is with somebody who is prepared and who is passionate and knows their names and knows how to connect with them before that time happens.
Well, so it's the bridge, right? So
that's the word I was looking for.
You're building that bridge, from the kids as the kids pastor to the youth ministry. There's that sense of ownership from youth ministry to our young adults. I remember when I graduated high school, my mom wrote a letter to our lead pastor and I know a lot of us go through this, but I had an incredibly tight youth ministry, was super, super involved. And then when I graduated, and I even have coined it the black hole. It's this black hole that you just kind of, as graduating, you're going, where do I fit? I'm too old to be in big church, right, as we call it. I'm too old to still stay in the youth ministry because that's kind of creepy, But there's that sense of ownership that we as kid and youth pastors and leaders are taking for that young adult. And Jay, I've heard you just with such passion for the young adults, including them in this conference. So we want to encourage you to be a part of this. We are NextGen.
Absolutely.
So man, I'm excited.
I'll offer up another perspective as well, because no doubt there are many listeners that say, well, we don't really have a young adult ministry, and here's what I would say. Come for the practical tips on all levels. Come for practical tips on children's ministry. Come for practical tips on youth ministry. Do we have the number of workshops being offered?
Yes.
It's a lot.
It's a lot. It's a lot.
It's a lot.
Yeah.
So
I was counting them, Josh, in case, unless I miscounted on the way over here. I think there are 18 kids ministry breakouts.
Okay.
And that doesn't just include, we have what we're calling the NextGen workshops, which is for anybody.
Yes.
So
these would
it
be
doesn't matter.
So there's going to be 40 plus workshops to choose from.
Tons,
you can take a divide and conquer strategy. If you can bring multiple people from your church, obviously that's very, very helpful. But maybe as we've talked a lot about young adults here the last couple minutes, and a listener might be like, well, we don't have that. I would say come and get some practical tips on how to get the ball rolling on that.
It's good.
And you say, well, that's not me. Who in your church has a heart for that age group? Who in your church, I would say this, who in your church is the natural young adult magnet? They're probably there. And candidly, if your church doesn't have one, you probably don't have young adults in your church anyway.
That's so
that
true.
stings. I know.
It's another episode.
That does sting.
Right?
But think about that one.
Yeah.
If you don't have a system in place for them, then you'll lose them.
That's it. Really, really good stuff. We're going to be doing another episode, a couple more episodes on the conference itself, tracking specifically what the kid pastors and kids leaders can expect, the youth and young adults. We're even going to be talking about our master classes, which is something brand new this year. I mean, we've just got a lot going on. It's going to be an incredible conference. You're going to want to make sure that you go check out our website at nextgen.ag.org for all of the information. But as we wrap up this specific podcast, first of all, thank you to all of you for just your incredible leadership that you exhibit for the entire nation. Any last thoughts as we wrap up this episode?
Yeah, I have two. The first is the reason why I think it's really valuable for us as AG leaders to come to a conference like this is because it's going to be Pentecostal.
Amen.
And you're not going to, not every conference, whether it's NextGen or KidMin or youth or young adult or whatever it might be in specificity, not every one of those are going to be Pentecostal, but this one will be Pentecostal.
Yes.
In fact, that's one of the other reasons why we wanted John Lindell to be there. There is a revival that's happening inside their church. There are gifts of the Spirit. People are being healed and saved in scores of numbers. And I'm really believing that's what some of us are going to experience.
Yes.
The second thought that I had is, if you haven't already registered, you want to register now because there's an early bird registration.
That's it.
And you want to be able to grab that before, I think it's November the 14th. Okay, there you go.
At midnight, it'll switch. So make sure you do that. That's great. Anything else, Kelly, any thoughts?
And I would just say I can't wait to see my friends there.
Yeah.
And I can't wait to have the opportunity to pray with many of them in the response times, in the altar times. Like Jay said, I've been to several different kids ministry specific conventions and conferences, but there's something tangible in a Pentecostal environment.
So
when I still recall the response time at the last NextGen conference and the honor that it was to get to pray with some of my friends and obviously make some new friends, but to pray for some of those people that I knew their story and I watched God touch them and I saw them, many of them weep before the Lord, not because they were sad, but because God had seen them.
Yeah.
He had seen them and He had ministered to them personally. And man, there's no substitute for that. What God can do in those few moments can carry us on for another year, no matter what's happening in our lives. And so really looking forward to that piece.
That's good. Josh?
Yeah, so youth pastors need to come.
Yeah.
And I would just say, hey, let's not try and outcool each other.
Yeah.
Let's try.
The shoe game strong?
Shoe game's all right. You can do that. We want that. That's good. But let's make sure to build those bridges with the other associates that we are, one, taking the handoff from, but then also handing off to.
Yeah.
And if your lead pastor can come, bring them along. Maybe that would help you as an associate. Maybe you're the catalyst for that team dynamic. Maybe you don't have to be the one who's leading the team to serve as the catalyst for one who brings unity to a team.
Yeah, Holly, I do have one more other thing that I want to say.
Well, you just said two. Now you're on three.
Yeah, that's all right.
That's a real preacher there. You got 3 points.
3 points. There you go. So, look, John's not the only one, and Chad Gilligan's going to be speaking, as Kelly talked about, but we have Peter Reeves and Austin Westlake, and we got these master classes with Dr. Linda Seiler, and look, I mean, everybody's on this issue about identity, and she's got this incredible experience and wisdom and voice right now, prophetically into the world, and so you got Ellie Marquin, you got Julie Pratt. Steve Pulis. I mean, it's going to be a bang-up moment with all these workshops.
Yes. It's going to be really, really good. I said it earlier, but make sure you go to the website, nextgen.ag.org. You said it. Deadline is coming. Make sure you take advantage of that early bird registration. Again, thank you to all of you for being here today. We're going to
we forgot one thing. Holly's going to be there. You forgot Holly's going to be there. Holly's a party looking for a place to happen.
That's right.
She's going to be there.
Right. So thank you so much for joining us. We hope that you'll join us again for another impactful episode on growing as a next gen leader. And remember, Jesus called us to make disciples of him. So being a disciple making leader who makes disciples of Jesus Christ. See you next time.